What's up, guys? Blacklisted Voice, episode 29. We're here with Amanda Fischer. She joined us today, just coming off of a third place finish at Fittest Experience with her team.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on today, Amanda.
Yeah, glad to be here.
For sure, for sure. Um, so yeah, how Jeff? I guess did you have fun at the Fittest? Obviously,
Oh
a
my
third place
gosh.
finish is pretty sick.
Yeah, it was so much fun. That was the biggest competition I've ever competed in.
Yeah.
Only the second time on a team of four. And then yeah, my team and we had never competed together either. Me, Jalen, Haley, and James. And oh, it was so much fun.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like still relive memories from it. I mean, it was only 2 weeks ago, but still.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a pretty sick event. But you previously had competed at a pretty high level in sports though as well.
Yeah.
Like played softball in college.
Yep, played softball in college. I was a three-sport athlete in high school: volleyball, basketball, and softball. Um, and then yeah, decided to play softball in college. I actually almost played volleyball too, but decided one sport in college was enough.
What was your role on the volleyball court?
In high school I played all the way around. And
Okay.
then when I was a left side hitter, outside hitter,
Okay.
when I was in the front. So
Got it.
yeah.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, screw this, I'm just playing softball.
Yeah, I just figured in college, you're there to also get an education. So I figured I should make sure that I'm focusing on that as well. So
Yeah.
decided to just stick to one sport and
Yeah.
went with softball. So
Right on. Right on.
yeah,
What
yeah.
did you major in again?
My major was kinesiology, and then
Okay.
I have a minor in psychology.
Oh, okay, right on, right on.
Hmm.
And you decided not to pursue careers in those and go.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, when I first got out of college, I worked in higher education for about
Yeah.
4 years. So I was in kind of admissions roles at two different 2-year technical and community colleges.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, because in college, I got involved with a group called the Campus Ambassadors at UW Eau Claire, and it was all about like campus tours and like I love my college, all that sort of stuff. And I was like, this is really cool. This is
You're
fun.
like, I can get into this.
Yeah. So I did that for 4 years. And then when I really wanted to start focusing more on my CrossFit, like turning CrossFit into a career, um, I started coaching at
Mhm.
CrossFit Mendota, well, now Mendota Fitness up in Minnesota,
Yeah, yeah,
and um, basically coached and trained and um, yeah. So I guess that
yeah.
kind of uses my kinesiology, kind of, but
Yeah, right,
still not
right.
really.
I mean, there's definitely some carryover. Like I had a
Yeah.
oh, what was I? Exercise science. I was majoring in
Mm,
exercise science,
mhm.
and like some of the anatomy stuff and some of the physiology stuff definitely like helps you out a little bit.
Yeah,
But
you
there
have
were
some idea of like the muscles you're moving, different movements and stuff,
yeah,
but
yeah. Or if you're like your client comes in with like, oh, my shoulder's bothering me, you're like, well, I know all these muscles run into the shoulder. Like, let's start diagnosing some of these. Like,
yeah.
so
But I'm not a doctor, so
yeah, yeah. Like I'll help you, but you should probably see somebody for this.
yeah, yeah.
So um so like you played at a it was D2, right, for softball?
D3 actually.
D3. Okay,
Yep.
yep.
Hmm.
But you guys played at like a national championship level. Was that correct or
Yeah, well, so UW Eau Claire, the softball program has a really has a history of being pretty solid. The few years before me, they did go to the national championship
okay.
2 years in a row. And then when I was there, we got into the like postseason, into regionals twice.
Okay.
But then 2 of my years we didn't.
Okay.
But we were always at the top of the conference,
Yeah.
one of the top teams. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So how does like a CrossFit competition compare to like a playoff game in softball or something like that? Because I feel like that would probably be the like best comparison is like a playoff atmosphere rather than like
Yeah,
a
totally. You have a lot more fans at playoff games than
yeah,
regular
right.
games, especially at D3. Yeah, I mean, I've never actually been asked that question, so that's a very interesting question. I like that. I mean, the energy at CrossFit competitions is like second to none. Like,
Yeah.
holy crap. I would say that is pretty similar to the energy at like the conference tournament, which is the beginning of playoffs for
Okay. Yeah.
softball. So like, there's just like people everywhere and like, it's never quiet. And I
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
like that. I love, love, love that. That's like what I feed off of.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, I mean, if you think about like the game of softball and obviously like a CrossFit event, they're very different.
Yeah.
Softball is like faster paced than baseball, but still like a slower paced thing than CrossFit. But
Right.
I mean, it's still like when something happens or the ball's in play, that's when, you got to make it happen. And
Hmm.
it's a lot shorter of a period than like maybe a CrossFit event, but when an exciting play happens or a home run or somebody dives and catches a ball, it's got that same energy as when somebody, you know, when you're lunging for the last 50 feet and everybody's screaming at you, or like, it's got that same kind of energy, which is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's almost like softball is kind of like you'll have like these really high moments, but they're not super dense. And then CrossFit's like a super high moment with a bunch of density in it type.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What about like the nerves of it? Like, is it very similar to like coming up to bat? Like if you're like, do they play 7 or 9 innings?
7 in
7.
softball.
So
Yep.
like,
I had to think
okay. So
about
is
that
it
for a
like,
second. I was like,
8? So is it like, have you ever come up to bat with like 2 runners on, down by 1 in the bottom of the 7th inning with like 2 outs or something like that?
oh yeah. Oh yeah. All
Okay.
the time.
So
So
like,
I'd say I feel like it's similar, but also different.
okay.
You kind of like in softball, I feel like things are like obviously it's unpredictable and you don't know where the ball is going to get hit, like that sort of
Mhm.
thing. But it's also a little bit more predictable than sometimes in CrossFit, especially like in CrossFit, if you don't know the event you're going into or something
Yeah.
like that. But softball, when you get up to bat, I mean, it's the same. It's the same thing every time. You're looking at your coach. You're getting the signal, and you're executing what they want you to do. So like
Okay.
you're either going to hit the ball, you're either going to try to hit the ball, or you're either going to bunt the ball. There's really no other options.
Right. Right.
And with CrossFit, I think going into every event is so different.
Yeah. Yeah.
But especially like you're talking bottom of the 7th, 2 outs, down by 1 or 2 runners on base. Like that's definitely some high pressure. And
Yeah.
at that point, it's just, I feel like my nerves always come like before the action, like before
Okay.
a softball game, I'm nervous. But like once the game gets going, I'm like in it. My adrenaline's high. I'm not really thinking about that pressure. And kind of
Yeah.
the same with CrossFit. Like I am hella nervous before an event. But once the event goes, it's like game face is on and all you're thinking about is that next movement or the next
Yeah.
rep or, you know,
Okay. Yeah. So those are pretty like similar then, is like you
yeah.
focus in on whatever your task is at hand
Yeah.
type
And
thing.
I'm
Okay.
nervous beforehand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before 3, 2, 1 go or before
And after.
and yeah.
Yeah. It was yeah. Walk us through the last event really quick for Fittest for those that don't know. So I'll
Oh,
yeah, like
yeah.
so the Fittest, if you guys were following us, you probably were watching some of the leaderboard that weekend. But we had 2 teams going into the final events that were in contention for podium spots. Logan, Carey, Grant, and Taylor's team I think they were in second at that point in time. and there was an outside shot for them to get first place, but it was like one of those things where it's like they had to like win the event and then the other team had to get like sixth place or
Yeah.
something like that. So it was like it was an outside shot, but it was pretty tough. And then you guys were sitting in third place, but the fourth place team was only 10 points behind you guys. So yeah, like either one of you two beat each other. I can't remember, but I think you guys would have lost on the tie break, but I'm not 100%
I
on
think
that.
we had the tie break because we had a
Okay.
first and a second, and they had a first and a third.
Okay. Yep. So, but
Either way, we had to beat them to like make
yeah.
sure.
It was tight.
We
Yeah.
didn't want a tie break.
Yeah. And so this workout was like, it was waterfall style. So one person goes, completes all their work, comes back, tags the next person goes, completes all their work, come back. And Amanda was the leg of the competition or of her team.
Yep.
And yeah, so I guess they ended up beating the other team pretty dramatic fashion, but I don't did you know anything that was happening during that time?
Gosh. I mean, the
What
only reason
what was your part of the workout?
Yeah, so my part of the workout was I run out 3 legless rope climbs into 10 double kettlebell squat cleans. I almost said snatches. Squat cleans with 55-pound kettlebells in each hand.
Yeah.
And then a 50-foot front rack double kettlebell front rack walking lunge, obviously with the same 53-pound kettlebells. And I can do legless rope climbs. There's no question about that. But I knew like I had to get through that. I had to be efficient, but I also had to not fully be me and just go gung ho all out 100% at the beginning of a workout and burn myself out.
All gas, no brakes.
Exactly. And I knew that this workout was going to come down to that last female and the legless rope. Well, I mean, the kettlebells were a pretty tough thing with the weights with the weights that they were at, but it was going to come down to that last female. And I knew that. And I knew as long as I got to the kettlebells, I was going to be okay.
Yeah.
But the legless, oh my goodness, guys, I was literally I was holding back tears talking to Kyle in the warm-up area. He's just telling me, just keep your lats warm, just keep your lats warm. And I'm like, okay. I'm like literally just telling myself, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. Because I knew it was going to come down to something crazy. And I mean, I had no idea where the other team was at when it got to my part. I just ran out and started doing my thing. And then when I finished the kettlebell squat cleans, everybody who was on the other side, like my team, all of our like fans just started going crazy. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could tell you guys were just yelling. And I'm like, all right, this is it. I just need to go and make sure I don't get a no rep and whatever. And yeah, I got to the end and I just like collapsed. And again, almost like basically started crying again because I was so nervous. Because I knew it was going to come down to that. And just like all of the energy and adrenaline just like whooshed out through tears at the end of that.
Yeah. It was so like Amanda's lunging back to the start mat and like the team, and there was like obviously fans behind the team. So she's there's got to be photos of it somewhere. I know a photographer.
Well, and like the announcer at the end was like walking literally right behind me, basically talking in my ear, and my judge is in my face, making sure I'm doing all the right stuff. And it was crazy, but it was awesome.
Yeah. And so basically what ended up happening is obviously like, I don't think you really knew what was going on. All you knew is like you had to fucking lunge fast.
Yep.
But the team that was in fourth place ended up getting ahead of them, and they were actually I think it was 2 rope climbs ahead of you guys by the time that Amanda started. So a pretty significant lead on Amanda's team. And so I was standing behind the other team watching them go, and they ended up finishing, and I'm like looking around like, oh man, like hopefully they get this tie break and nobody comes in between them. And then all of a sudden the fourth place team's girl like stopped on the rope. And I was like, no fucking way. This is actually gonna happen. And she literally, like, I think at this point in time, like you had like matched her one rope climb or matched a rope climb or something like this, or something like that, or like you were starting your second rope climb or something. And this girl's on her third, and it took her probably 30 seconds to finish her last rope climb, and she was literally like a little bit over halfway up the rope, and was like 30 seconds to climb the rest of that halfway. And I thought she was
crazy. I don't even know that I could hang on for that long. At that point, I feel like I would have just dropped.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it was one of those things like
it felt like that long.
Yeah. But it was like there were like several times I was like, there's no way. And then she would like inch up again. And I was like, that's it, she's done. And then she would inch up again. But what ended up happening was she got so exhausted from that last rope climb that she got two kettlebell cleans in, and Amanda got to her kettlebells at that point in time. And she was so exhausted from the rope climb that at rep 5 of 10 on the kettlebell cleans, she set them down and took a step back, and you could see she was just done in her face. And Amanda's like 2 reps behind, still cleaning them. And she like rests them on her shoulders. She stands up from a clean, like at one point in time, I'm like, you better not fucking
put like rep 7 or something like that.
Yeah. And so like it was like kind of rep for rep for a little bit, and then on the 9th or 10th rep, like Amanda got in front of her and started lunging in front of her, and like everyone is like behind her, like just freaking screaming and like yelling at her. Then she crosses the finish line and breaks down, like is on all fours, and like gets up onto like her knees, and was like, I was so nervous. Like bawling.
Oh gosh.
Like, well, you held it together for the 3 minutes that you needed to. So but yeah, it was a pretty fun event, and they took the podium, 3rd place on the podium for that. So yeah, pretty fun.
Really freaking cool.
Yeah. And we were actually chatting, what was it, like a couple days ago, and you're like, I don't know if that event sold you on team, but you're pretty sold on team now.
Yeah, I think so. Like I said to you, I've been a team athlete. I've never done an individual sport. Never. Like before I played softball, I was playing soccer. Like, I've never done an individual sport. And so, and it's like I've done team competitions before. But yeah, this one just, I think because of the level it was at, and just the intensity and the athletes I was competing with and against, but like, the athletes I was with, it just, I don't know. I think it'd still be cool to do individual maybe someday, but at that point, I think I'm all about the teams right now. It's just so fun. You're with friends, you're suffering together. It's like, sure, when you're individual, you're suffering with the other individuals out there, but it's totally different to be in the same lane as people that are working to get the same score as you, and like together and suffering together. That's totally different.
Yeah. It's like there's a lot more camaraderie in it. Like we were kind of chatting about how like individual, you're like supportive of the rest of the group, but at the same time you're like, maybe I hope you get injured on this.
Exactly. Yeah. And I honestly think too, like with teams, I feel like it almost pushes me to even be a better athlete, or like be better, like, because in a workout, obviously not getting prideful and trying to do too much and then like screwing my team over, but like, if it's something like, okay, we're on your pace, like we're jumping up when you're ready. It's like, okay, I'm able to push myself, and like maybe if I was by myself, I would rest an extra 3 or 5 seconds, but I'm like, no, this person's counting on me and we gotta go. And I get up there and I get like, oh yeah, that was 10 toes to bar is totally fine. It's like I feel like it pushes me to be able to like do more than I think I can, because it's not just me out there.
What are some differences that you've noticed, like, because you've done a few individual competitions now, So like, what are some differences, like besides like kind of pushing before you want to go, between like the individual side of things and the team side of things?
Yeah. I think a lot of it, like on the floor, obviously, we talked about like you're just when you're individually, like you're doing all the work by yourself. I
Hmm.
mean, I'm sure at higher levels it's maybe not quite like this, but like at the competitions I've been, it's like individuals are doing honestly like just as much work, if not more work than the teams, and
Yeah.
they're doing it all by themselves.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just like even physically, I think individual competition is more physically taxing,
Hmm.
or can be for sure. Not that teams not are still very sore at the end of that
Yeah.
competition.
The
Um,
intensity is a lot higher on the
and
team side of things.
yes, exactly. I was just about to say that too. Like because of that, the intensity is so high because you're not having to, so if it's in 12-minute AMRAP, you're not having to move for that entire 12 minutes typically. Sometimes you do.
Sometimes, yeah.
But it's still different. Like you're not, if you're maybe you're just hanging there or holding, you're not
Mhm,
like,
mhm.
you're not contracting or like loaded or something like that, so the intensity can be a lot higher because you're moving harder for shorter periods of time in
Yeah,
team.
yeah.
And then off the floor, I think it's just, like kind of back to camaraderie. There's camaraderie on the floor, but then off the floor, it's just like, we're all hanging out in between events and it's just like chilling and you have three people that you like hanging out with and
Yeah,
like maybe you're talking about the event for a little bit but then you're just kind of chilling with your friends eating food
yeah,
and waiting
yeah.
for the next event.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I feel like that's one thing that like helps a lot with team events is like when you're an individual, you're just like sitting there kind of like maybe you had a bad event, and you're just like sitting there brooding about the event. Whereas like a
mhm,
team, like you have three other people that, maybe also had bad events, but
mhm,
like all three of you guys can kind of like discuss and like vent a little bit about it, or all four of you, I should say. And then it's back to like joking around and like
yeah,
focused on the next event. It almost gets you out of that, like mental state of like focusing on the past, and you can like put it behind you a little bit quicker, it seems. Or has
totally.
that been your experience with it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, at like going back to Fittest with this team, like our first event, the first event, I like, I feel like teams across the board in that event just kind of got kicked in the teeth, but like
Yeah,
we
yeah,
definitely did not do as well as we expected or thought we should have on that
totally.
event. That was our lowest finish of the weekend.
Yep, yep.
Um, and I think it was just like for all of us, we're all relatively new to that level of
Mhm.
competition and on a team. So I think that was part of it. But like at the end, it was just like we were a little frustrated, but we were able to like talk about it and talk about it more into like, okay, so this is what this weekend's going to feel like.
Yeah, yeah.
And, and just kind of talk about those things and get used to, and like talk about, okay, how could have we communicated better or like, and it was just kind of like, nobody blamed one person. It was
Mhm.
just like everybody kind of like again, we just talked about okay, how can we make sure that event like that doesn't happen again?
Yeah,
What can
yeah,
we change? And like, I feel like with if you're out there by yourself and that it's like, okay, well, it's literally like what could have I done differently? And when
right.
you're on a team, obviously you have to think about that as well. But
Yeah,
typically it's not just one person having to fix or change something.
totally.
It's
Yeah,
like because you were either working alongside somebody else or it's
yeah,
not typically like okay, I was the sole reason that event went the way that it did.
for sure, for
um
sure.
and which like you said is easier to, I mean, I feel like sometimes people can in teams too could feel like, oh, I am the sole reason that event went the way that it did. But
Right,
again, you
right.
have the three other people to be like, no, you're not.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
Yeah, yeah,
it's a
yeah,
freaking team event. So, like you said, it can pull you out of that mindset and kind of like pity party, if you will.
for sure, for sure. Yeah. And I think too, like, that competition, like in the old format, there would have been, the top six teams. I mean, literally all top 10 of those teams would have been in the old format. Like top 10, if not games level teams. So, and obviously it's kind of like shifting back to that older format here a little bit. So like that really was the first competition in like literally a year that has had that level of competition at it. And, you know, both of our teams and like you said, like a lot of the other teams out on the floor didn't do as well as they would have expected on that first workout. And I think that just goes to like show like people were missing the intensity that was brought in that first workout. And I think everybody just kind of got like kicked in the teeth, like, oh, like I forgot about this.
Yeah. This is how CrossFit
like,
feels.
Yeah. And so like I think you guys, like you and the other team did a good job of kind of like recognizing that and being like, okay, look, we gotta, like, this isn't training anymore, like and this isn't, you know, competing at these local competitions. Like all these teams are fucking good. And we have to bring it every single workout. And so I think that was just kind of like also like something you guys could kind of rally around, is like, this is for real, like we need to push on this one. So
yeah, well, and that, like, with my team specifically, we were in 5th place, I think, at the end of Saturday going into the final day of competition, I believe.
I think so, yeah.
And then the morning event on Sunday, honestly, was before the whole weekend. That was the event that I thought was going to be our worst finish. So that one was.
It's funny how that works.
Oh my gosh. Like, right. Not the first event. I was thinking it was this one. And because it had running, like a total of a mile of running for each pair, 15 burpee box jump overs, and then, you know,
30 and then like
30 total. You're right.
100 meters of farmers carries with the 70-53 again.
Yeah, and heavy farmers carries, for a total of 400 meters. So it's just for me, I thought that was going to be our worst finish simply because of me as an athlete. And like my running has gotten a lot better since working with Kyle, but still can always work on that. I never feel good running, even if the numbers show like, oh, that was a good run. I always felt like crap. It doesn't matter. And then burpees, I'm good at them, but it spikes my heart rate and my breathing and like all of this. So I was like, that was the one I was expecting for us to do the worst on. We were in 5th going into the day. And so we're obviously the night before, we're all like, we got to freaking show up tomorrow. And we start the day with an event win. It was just like, what?
You're like, this is sick.
So at that point, after that event, we were tied for 3rd, I believe. And so then from there, it was just like hanging on. And
yeah, I think you guys ended up beating that 4th place team again by 1 spot in the muscle up workout. Which was the 10-point difference you saw going into the final event. So it was it's funny how that works though, like especially in team competitions, because there's just like there's so many variables to it that like you know, there were several times where like when I was competing specifically, where we would be practicing workouts and like, man, we're going to take like a last place finish on this workout. And then it'd be like a top 3 score. And you're like, oh, okay. And then
where'd that come from?
Yeah. And then you're like, man, we're going to freaking smash this workout. And then it'd be like a like sub 5 score. And you're like, what?
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that there's so many like variables and just unknowns that come in competition that like just putting any expectations on workouts can be pretty difficult sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, like, just because like when we practice that workout, the running one and burpees, like just because it feels like shit in training doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go to shit out on the competition floor.
Right.
So this was your second experience with team. Your first one was back up in Wisconsin. Is that correct? At the
stomping grounds.
Yeah. How did you get hooked up with that team again?
Sammy Nally. We worked out together a little bit in Minnesota.
Okay.
at Mendota before she switched gyms. And then, and
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
she actually saw that I was up for the Sisu summer throwdown with Caleb.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
then while I was up there still, before I came back down here, she texted me and was like, "Hey, want to do the big impact games?" And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Hey, Kyle, what do you think?" He's like, "Do it."
Yeah. Like you've been training for like 8 months now, like time to get some competition experience in.
Yeah. Especially with like COVID and stuff, and like take the competitions when you can at that point.
Right. Yeah. So that was like obviously your first kind of taste of team experience. Like how did these two events differ?
I mean, so the Big Impact Games was just a smaller event
Mhm.
in general. That one was fun because they had the worm, so we got to use the worm a little
Yeah.
bit, which was new for every single one of me and my teammates on that team.
Yeah.
But that was fun, as well as awful.
Yeah.
So that one, just like the size of the event was a little smaller, although I doubt that'll be the case this year for the Big Impact Games. But
Yep.
the last year is a little smaller. I think there were not even 10 teams
Oh,
when,
okay.
yeah, is more than 5, I think, but it was smaller. There was not a
Yeah.
ton of
I think it was
RX
like
teams.
7, right? 7 or 8.
Yeah, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Um, and it was more of a local competition at that point. So a lot of the people are really just there, you know, for fun to just
Hmm.
compete,
Yeah.
with this fittest one, had a prize purse, and so we're like, we want the money on the podium and all of that.
Yeah.
So like, so it's like, not that the pressure was necessarily different, but it's just like, well, the pressure was different. Like, you obviously still feel pressure no matter what with the competition, but when there's money on the line, that obviously maybe gives you a little extra drive.
You're like, this is a week's worth of meals right here.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, I think the events were a lot different. I think in the Big Impact
Mhm.
Games, it was kind of like with the worm and stuff, it was a little more skillful, I guess. And
Okay.
the TFX obviously was high skill, the legless rope climbs, all that.
Mhm.
But they really pushed with the like weights of things, like with the
Yeah.
kettlebells. Like, I don't even like, I've never really worked with double 53-pound kettlebells and like
Yeah.
anything. So like,
Yeah.
that was a totally different and like more intense type of thing when
For
you're used
sure.
to like, oh, the 35-pound dumbbell.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
So
I was talking with Logan on the way back from going out that night. And I think we had only done like one hang kettlebell squat clean workout like prior to that. So
yeah,
it's like that's definitely personally like not something I program a ton. Like
yeah,
obviously for like people that are getting into that level of competition, like you'll get a touch on it, but
yeah,
not a common movement for sure.
yeah. So I think that was the biggest difference with TFX, was just like, I've said to you before too, like, if I want to compete at that higher level, I have to get comfortable with a 50-pound dumbbell
Mhm.
or even heavier, like, because it's
Mhm.
not going to be a 35-pound dumbbell for the elite or pro women, whether
Yeah,
it's individual or team. Like, it's not going
right.
to be 35 pounds. So getting comfortable moving that type of weight, I think, was the biggest difference. Because there's obviously going to be gymnastics in the RX pro divisions, like depending what a
Yeah.
competition calls it. There's always going to be those high level gymnastics, but it's like moving that heavier weight, like, and not just the barbell, like
Odd
specifically with
object.
like the odd object and like that sort
Yeah,
of
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. And it's like it's kind of unique too because there's like always like you can manipulate or create new odd objects, but like gymnastics is very like finite. It's like
Yep.
either pulling your feet up to the bar or pulling
Hmm.
yourself up or over the bar or over a
Yep.
set of rings. Like there's not a ton of different creativity outside of like maybe doing some like double and triple taps like you see in grid, but
Yeah.
like there isn't as many like variables that you can like create inside of a gymnastics thing. So like
Right.
just like doing weird stuff in training sometimes like
Mm-hmm.
can help out with the odd object stuff.
Yeah, totally.
And being a bigger athlete helps out as well.
Holla.
Yeah, the Coda team that won they were
Yeah.
big people.
Mm-hmm.
They were not saying that they didn't have great performances or they're great athletes, but there was definitely
Right.
you could see like the bigger teams did better in that competition.
Yeah.
It was like a little bit more power output,
Mm-hmm.
manipulating those objects a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Thing. So so you would say the big impact game was a little bit more would you say like communication oriented, and then Fittest was like
Yeah.
a little
Yeah.
bit skill oriented almost, or
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. Yeah. I mean, because there obviously was communication, like there's always communication that needs to happen when you're working on a team, but especially with like, there was really only two of our events in TFX that had synchro movements, I think.
see
2 out
synchro
of the
shoulder
5.
overhead, toes to bar,
That was the first event,
burpees.
and then the burpees and the front squats.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's really only 2 out of 5 events that had synchro movements. Otherwise, we
Well, technically it was technically 9 because you had the 3 in the day like the week before.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I guess that only counted as 1, right?
They did only count that as 1. So 6 events.
Well,
And
the snatch and I think it was 7. But sorry, I guess that doesn't. Yeah.
We digress.
Yeah.
But
Sorry.
really, actually, there was really only 1 event that had synchro because the shoulder to overhead and toes to bar weren't synchro.
Yeah, with hanging. Yeah.
So that one took a lot of communication just because like there was like passive stuff happening, but like really there was only 1 event in TFX that was synchro. And I think synchro takes a lot of communication, where like in big impact games, we had a lot more synchro. We had synchro bar muscle ups, toes to bar. We had the worm. You have to communicate on that thing no matter what you're doing, so we had a lot more synchro stuff in the big impact game. So yeah, I would say communication was really, really, really important in that one. Again, always important on a team, but with TFX, there was like the 1 synchro, and then that very first event that everyone got kicked in the teeth. I think that one probably took the most communication.
For sure. Yeah. I almost count like those holds and stuff like that as like synchro work, just because like there is like a lot of communication that goes on in those things. Like, yeah, you are performing the movement, but like, somebody might be like their grip might be blowing up while you're doing toes to bar, and all of a sudden they fall off and you're like, what? They're like, I literally can't hold on to the bar anymore. You're like, fuck, we still have 20 toes to bar to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like those events are probably some of the hardest, I think, just from like a communication standpoint, because like you obviously saw this, like you can have a plan going out onto the floor, and more often than not that plan does not, or it goes to shit. So it's pretty hard if somebody blows up on an isometric hold to like come up with a new game plan for that event.
And luckily that wasn't our issue in that event, but it was more like our rep scheme plan just didn't go to plan. And then like with the shoulder to overhead, we had like 5 left, and I asked James to take them, but he had basically let go of his grip on the bar as soon as I was gonna complete it. So then he had to like reset his grip, and then he got 1 or 2 reps, and then I was like, okay, I'll take them. And then the judge was looking at me, so I had gone, and I like am holding the bar over my head, and she's yelling names, and I'm yelling at the judge, I'm over here.
Look.
So like for us it was more like the rep scheme, just like you said, the intensity of that workout, and really like the rep scheme wasn't like super high per person, but just because you're moving so fast in it. But I think after the shoulder overhead too, James and I, like we for sure got our communication was better throughout the toes to bar for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And it's tough too, like when you haven't ever worked together before,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So like that was a good event to like not necessarily shake off the rust, but like come to like a realization like, oh, like we actually like we need to talk during this workout and like
Yep.
communicate and be like I can't just black out and hold this barbell in the front rack. Like I need to be watching the other person, counting their reps, like
Mm-hmm.
paying attention to what they're doing, like, oh shit, their face looks like it's about to melt off. Like I should probably take some of these reps type thing.
Yeah,
You know?
I think that point you just made, I think is really important with teams too, is that you can't just black out and go or black out and
Mhm.
like assume the other person's gonna do exactly what you talked about before
Yeah,
the event
yeah.
before the event started. Because again, like anybody who trains enough to knows that you can, even in training, you go in with a plan for your training day or the pieces of that you have for your training, and 9 times out of 10 they do not go how you think they're going to go,
Yeah, yeah,
and you have to change. So especially with a team, it's like you can't just,
yeah.
okay, well, I'm just going to do this now and like not talk about it. You have to, and
Right,
it has to
right.
be like quick, fast communication,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you're on the floor and you got to keep moving. You can't sit there for 2 minutes figuring it out. It's like,
Right. Yep,
so.
yep. Even like 10 seconds out on the floor can be like so detrimental to a score.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think that's why you see a lot of the time like the teams that so like Code obviously I think I'm pretty sure they all came from the same gym.
Yeah.
And like Mayhem's obviously from the same gym. When Brute won, they were, all from the same gym. So like the teams that can train together a little bit more, like have a much more of an advantage when they go out to the competition floor, because the individual's tendencies on a
Mm-hmm.
high volume toes to bar workout, high volume shoulder to overhead workout, grip intensive
Mm-hmm.
workout. You're like, okay, I know this person's going to be hurting when we come off this hang into these overhead squats. I'm probably going to need to start these overhead squats before them and give them a little
Yeah.
bit of a break type thing.
Yeah. Or like, if that it's like, okay, if I start blowing up or whatever, and can trust, like, okay, I know this person
Yeah,
can take more than we
yeah,
talked about if they need to,
yeah,
because like, their
yeah,
skills
yeah.
and stuff. Because I think that was one thing with my team that we kind of had to figure out, because it was like, I think all of us were kind of used to being like that person on the team that takes more
Mhm.
of the work in the previous teams we'd been on.
Yeah,
But like we were literally on a team where all of us could take extra in some part of each
each work.
event, like
Yeah, yeah,
depending on what it was. And it's like we are able to trust each other, and we just had to learn that. And so I think that being the first event, even though it wasn't our best finish, I think that was the best first event, because it got us, like, we learned a lot in that event for sure.
yeah, yeah. And it's one of those things like, okay, if that event had been Sunday morning and all of a sudden you take a 9th place on that event Sunday morning, like that's demoralizing going into the 2 other workouts for the day. So
Yeah.
it was like look, we got it out of the way. Now it's just all uphill from here type thing, which was
Yeah.
pretty good. It's cool to see like those little things that like happen in competition where you like
Yeah.
look back and you're like, damn, lucky.
Yeah.
Like riding that high for the rest of or like being able to climb out of the hole versus like getting hit in the fucking face like Sunday morning is like,
Yeah.
huge for momentum swings. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So overall, what's next on the agenda here? I know we're a couple of weeks away from the Open, I guess.
Yeah, we're a month out from the Open, so that's obviously the next big focus. And then Haley and I have signed up for WOD Gods
That's in April.
at the end of April.
Okay.
And then, I mean, through the Open, I'll be competing with a team through a gym down here in Atlanta. So that is exciting. This is like the first year where it's like, I'm not just doing the Open to see how well I can do, to see
Yeah.
how like much I've improved. I'm like doing the Open and going into this season with like, holy shit, like I can actually
Have a
like
season.
have a season
Yeah. Yeah.
with with these other people and with this team.
Yeah,
So like that's really exciting. And that's
for
like
sure.
obviously with the changes and stuff, we don't fully know exactly what that's all going to look like, but
Right.
like
I
knowing
guess,
that I have a chance to like actually have a season is pretty freaking cool.
yeah, right. And like have it be a structured season where it's not
Yeah.
just what sanctional do you want to do? I don't
Yeah.
know. There's 9 months of them. Like we can go to one a month. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
and then like take no off season and start right back over again, you know?
Yeah.
So this is like what I grew up in CrossFit, and like, you know, I have like sad seasonal depression disorder. So it was always like the open was like shit. And then like springtime would happen and be like fun for like, I guess, age group qualifier, or the qualifiers now are like, you're starting to get like a little bit more fun. And then after that, it'll be like, you know, semifinals, and that's going to be
Yeah.
like in the summertime. You're going to be like in this like middle of like training, like swing, like it's going to be having this structure, like, and structure to it where it's like, you know, the steps is just so much better for the athletes, like psychologically, if that makes sense. And like
Absolutely.
knowing like, okay, these are the dates that I'm done, like I can freaking push hard for these dates.
Yep.
And like once those are done, then I get my break or whatever. So like it just gives you a little bit more like confidence and kind of like fire to just like push when you're down a little bit. So
Yeah, absolutely.
this is going to
Yeah.
be a fun year.
I am
Like,
pumped for this season for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. I'm definitely more used to like what you've been through, like in collegiate sports too.
Right. Yeah, there's obviously a structure to the season, and we're kind of like the competitions that have been like our just like regular season games, and now we're getting in the open. It's the end
Yeah.
of the regular season, and we'll see where postseason takes us.
Yeah. It's going to be pretty sweet. It's going to be pretty
Yeah.
sweet. So, cool. Well, I think we'll probably wrap it up here. So
Yeah.
thanks for I think we're about 50 minutes in. So
Something like that. Yeah.
yeah, it's time to work out now, I guess.
Heck yeah.
So thanks for coming on. How do people find you or get a hold of you?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. But you can find me on Instagram or TikTok if you really want. I'm more active on Instagram, but the handles are the same. It's Amanda_thighs.
Yeah. How did you get that? You know?
Well, if you haven't seen me, I have some big quads, thighs, always have. And actually where thighs came from, my girlfriend, before she knew me, like before she knew my name, she literally just called me Thighs. And so then when she learned my name and we like got to know each other, it was Amanda Thighs. And I'm literally to this day, I'm Amanda Thighs and as the contact in her phone. So
Legit.
that's where thighs comes from.
Yeah. Sweet. That's awesome. Right on. Well, yeah, you can find Amanda on Instagram or TikTok, I guess. You don't dance on TikTok, huh?
No.
Okay.
I post like once every few weeks, maybe. That's why I said Instagram is much more
Yeah.
consistent.
Yeah. So yeah, if you guys are watching on YouTube, make sure you give us a follow on Instagram, blacklisted.hq. Give Amanda a follow. If you guys are listening on Spotify, iTunes, or another podcasting app, please head over to our Instagram, follow us on Instagram or YouTube, and give Amanda a follow. And yeah, thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for coming on, Amanda.
Thanks for having me.
For sure, we'll chat with you guys next time.
All right. See ya.